because it's a biarticulate muscle, crosses the ankle and the knee. So what happens is if I'm in plantar flexion, it's a plantar flexor, it can't flex the knee anymore.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
But when I dorsiflex, dorsiflexion does stretch your calf, but because I'm going into knee flexion, it's picking up that slack. The biarticular muscle really can't do two things at once. So when I dorsiflex, it has better alignment for knee flexion, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, or is it confusing still?
Yep.
So that's why when I do a seated calf, the gastroc, because the knee is in flexion, the gastroc can't fire very well. So, because it can't do two things at once.
So people are primarily feeling this in their calves?
In general, all the time?
Yeah.
Then in that case, you want to plantar flex a little bit, or try to get a relaxed ankle. So, for the most part. Average reps, lowest I go here probably is like 7, but on average probably 12 to 20 reps. And obviously beginners are going to be higher on that continuum. You could even, people. And what I'll do is I'll get you kind of a sheet. I have a sheet with all the optimal rep ranges for different levels of clients. So it varies with the client. So then we got this guy over here, the kneeling leg curl. This thing's a beast, obviously. Beast. Everybody knows the starting resistance is just crazy. That's why. So for me, I kind of rate this as a level 2 plus because the starting resistance is so high, especially with women. A lot of little women, they just can't even. Some of them can't even do the beginning weight. So what's the most common compensation? And I personally am guilty of this myself, especially in my own training. But what's the most compensation common?
Lifting your leg, lifting your knee away from your back.
Well, yeah, that is, especially with people.
So your hip is.
Yeah, the hip moving. That's probably, I think personally, either the back buckling or the hip moving is the most common compensation. The rocking the hips. That's kind of the most common compensation. Another thing too over here, you can kind of, they call it a seesaw pattern. You notice how, like when people are doing this, their hips will kind of move with the weight. Honestly, if I'm doing a 12-25 protocol, I kind of let it go sometimes just because people are just trying to get through it. It's kind of more just a burnout thing. But if it's lower reps and stuff, I really try to keep that in check. But when it's high reps and that type of protocol, I kind of let it go. So you got to kind of know sometimes when you do let the form go a little bit for that metabolic effect. So optimal rep range here, typically with somebody very advanced, that 3 is probably the lowest I would go, but probably 5 and up. But on average, I would say 9 to 20, 7 to 20. It's going to depend upon the level. Level 4 client, I feel comfortable going 3 to 4. Level 3 client, 5 and up. And, then probably level 2, like probably 7 or 9. Questions?
One thing I noticed with several of my clients, and they're all women, but on that, sometimes they have trouble doing the top plate, but you can get a general idea whether you should even use that machine or not from other exercises.
Yeah.
Very easy.
Very true. Yep.
I mean, if they're having issues with something else,
yep.
Even like an RDL or even they're tough on this one or that other prone knee flexion, that's not even an option. I throw it out. it's not even worth teaching them.
Yep, exactly. Any ideas when you wouldn't do this machine?
Yeah, any back issues, usually I wouldn't, for sure.
It's definitely a possibility for sure. Because it does, because you're no longer, you're really asking for active stabilization, so that's definitely a possibility. One advantage is your hip is already flexed 90 degrees though, so that can be somewhat helpful too. But usually one of the things I've found, this is more just personal experience, all the football players that have knee surgeries, they all struggle with this one a little bit. And it's like, I usually, if they're coming off a knee injury or something like that, I can't use this one right away. I found that it's something I got to do a lot of prone first before we can even get into this one, and even when they're strong. So I've found, especially ACL, I found that usually with ACL stuff, they have some pain in the initiation of flexion. So a lot of times I got to use a shorter arc with them, and especially if the knee surgery is a long time ago, any of the guys that have scar tissue. Some people with sciatica, you'll find that they have range of motion deficits as well. Any ideas on what to do? And they have a big difference of asymmetrical strength. have sciatica on this. There are some tricks. Any of you guys got any ideas on some of the tricks?
When you're on that,
Yeah.
you can internally or externally rotate. That can sometimes make a difference.
And it is good. It is good. I mean, we all know we're going to get that lateral rotation that happens is going to happen in every leg curl. But the biggest thing with sciatica a lot of times is you got to release the hamstring a lot of times. So you got to, because the hamstring can entrap it. Piriformis, sometimes you can do a quick piriformis stretch. But another thing that's crazy too is I've found sometimes if there's not sciatica, but there's major range of motion issues and you're not sure what the issue is, like sometimes you think, man, they're so weak on this side. I would always suggest when you see a difference in strength, stretch the antagonist. And a lot of times you'll find, like Pamela, if anybody's noticed that, we work with her sometimes. This was pre-sciatica a long time ago. She would have some issues. Every now and then she had a little sciatica. But if I stretch her hip flexor first, all of a sudden her range of motion is there. So a lot of times it's like the rectus femoris, which is preventing the range. So it's not always a strength deficit. I'm trying to think, anybody else have anything else to add to that? Let's see what we got. Compensations, we talked about that. Movement, tips. Oh, I know. What's the best, let's go back to this one. Ordering, where would I put this in programming, like this leg extension? Relative to other quad movements, relative to programming. Any ideas?
Towards the end.
Yep, putting it towards the end is a big key, and then obviously a lot of times having preceding like a compound quadricep movement first, if I'm going to stack. I don't really believe in doing that first and then hitting a squat. I think it should be the opposite. It's called pre-exhaustion, some people use that. What about leg curls? How about programming with other hamstring exercises? This guy here, how it stacks well.
Maybe after a bigger, like a deadlift or an RDL.
It can be for some rough days though.
It can be.
If you want to fire them up and
Yeah.
and get them ready for
Yes.
having knee pain. Hamstring works great before you get into a stretch.
Yes.
Yeah, if they're
Exactly.
this is a weaker deal for them, then I would definitely.
So if somebody has anterior knee pain, what's a good protocol then? Exactly.
Fire up your hamstrings, glute activation,
Yep.
tongue stretch.
Yep. That's exactly it. All those things seem to work really well, huh?
Foam roll.
Foam roll. I mean, there's a lot of tools, we can use them all, okay? We can use them all. That all works. And then, how about if I was going to do 6, 12, 25 programming, where would I put this?
Which one?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do 6. I'd probably go maybe more, a prone works a little bit better than this in lower reps. That's one of the things I've found. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, because I feel very comfortable doing 3 reps with advanced, but not here. But obviously a deadlift is, if a person can deadlift, and if I have that in that series, I might want to do deadlift first and then this. A lot of times, I don't like to do unilateral work preceding bilateral work, So if I do a single leg RDL, I probably would do a bilateral movement first before a single leg movement. Any ideas why? And this applies to pretty much all bilateral training. Well, it's because, let's say I do a single leg squat and then go into a leg press. You're not going to get equal loading, because one side is more recovered than the others.
You're not going to get your optimal
It's more
strength
neurological.
And fatigue, right? Recovery.
Well, yeah.
Because if I did a Bulgarian split squat, really hard both sides, and then I hop right on a leg press, there was no recovery. So one side is more recovered than the other. And so when you're pressing, you're not going to be pressing evenly. You know what I mean? So that's one thing to think about in how you order exercises too, is the recovery. So like here, if I do 6, 12, 25, and I do a lot of knee flexion, I have had some people do that, like Dan Maldoni, because of his hip. I mean, I always prefer to kind of get some hip movement in if I do a 6, 12, 25 with the knee flexion, but I couldn't because of his hip. So that poor guy had to do 6 on the prone leg curls, and then we would do seated leg curls for 12, and then I'd have him do like a ball leg curl for 25, But it was all knee flexion. And we've done that before, haven't we, with our 6, 12, 25, and that's killer. That's when you cramp up when you're sitting down there.
He was probably vocal about it.
Huh?
Was he vocal about it?
Oh, he said it's probably easy. I'm sure.
Yep.
Okay. Variations. Variations. So type of variations we got 1/4 movements. We can do unilaterals. We can do unilateral 1/4s. If you're doing 1/4s,
Negative.
you could do negatives. You could do accentuate. You go up with 2 legs, down with 1 leg. It doesn't. It's not as easy on this one. Single leg tranny is not as easy on this one, obviously, because you got to have the other leg up. Here are your variations. You don't have as foot position. Those can be variations. Whether your position of internal or external rotation is a variation. Whether you can accentuate, by pointing the toe, and then changing the foot position as you do it. So there's a lot of different variations you can do for different purposes. What about prone leg curl?